Inside the Golden Silk Clan headquarters, a sharp object flew past, leaving a small cut on Vice Captain Lionel's cheek. Captain Luke loudly scolded him for always complaining. Lionel tried to calm his teammates and explained. But Luke immediately retorts that although Lionel is the vice captain and can take care of the affairs of the Gilia clan, others should not interfere in his love life. Lionel insists that he has no intention of interfering, but advises Luke to separate his personal life from his work. The story flashes back to 2 months ago when a beautiful girl named Fina joined the guild, and Luke fell in love with her at first sight. The problem lies in the special favor she received even though she was just a newcomer. She was quickly promoted to captain and received the same salary as the veteran members, causing Vice Captain Lionel to hear countless complaints from the members that Fina is untested and too inexperienced to give orders. Lionel begins to worry and advises Luke that if he truly loves her, he should consider marrying her and settling down. Back in the present, Lionel reminds Luke that although he has the right to marry whoever he wants, it should not affect his work. Luke got angry, slammed the table, and accused Lionel of always lecturing as if he was more moral than others. Finally, Lionel couldn't take it anymore. Shouting that they were the same age, even if Luke was his son, he would never let him act so stupidly. This was the last straw for Luke. He immediately fired Lionel. In response, Lionel angrily said there was no need to withdraw his decision, because he would never come back, then slammed the door and left alone. Luke pondered, realizing that this was the second time Lionel had been expelled from the clan. Outside, Lionel recalled that this was not the first time he and Luke had had a conflict. They had founded the clan together more than 10 years ago, through countless life and death moments, to become one of the most famous clans in the city. But 5 years ago, Lionel was kicked out. As the clan grew richer, Luke squandered his money on drinking, gambling, and women. Lionel confronted him about his extravagant lifestyle, leading to his expulsion less than 6 months later. However, Luke begged Lionel to return, saying that no one else could take on the role of vice captain. Reluctantly, Lionel agreed, hoping that Luke had changed. But now he was kicked out for the second time. Lionel questioned his decision. As he pondered giving up on the adventurer's path, he noticed a commotion in front of the Adventurers Guild. Curious, he approached and saw 3 young girls desperately begging for another chance. Jennifer, the receptionist, explained that the girls had been expelled for not paying their patronage fees. Being expelled from the guild meant losing access to the market and quests. Lionel asked Suki, a girl in armor, if they were really out of money. Jennifer said that they should have money left since they had completed 2 quests. But the girls lamented that they had run out of money after dividing it evenly. In tears, Suki grabbed Lionel's hand and asked, trembling, "What should we do now?" Lionel observes Suki's sword and asks if she possesses the rare ability of a hero. Suki is surprised but confirms, introducing her 2 companions. Meisha, a priestess blessed by Saint Talon, and Mirialia, a mage with the skill of sage. They are childhood friends, almost like sisters. Lionel realizes that their team has a perfect balance of skills. Hero, saint, and sage, with the ability to fight both close and long range and recover quickly. The only thing they lack is a leader to coordinate tactics. Remembering his plan to abandon the path of adventure, Lionel tells himself that he has no obligation to help the girls. However, their pleading eyes make him unable to resist. Finally, he agrees to pay them a sponsorship fee. At first, the girls are surprised and refuse. But then they happily accept, pleading with him not to abandon them. Lionel wonders what trouble he has gotten himself into this time. While reassuring the girls that he will not leave, he realizes that he cannot return to his old clan to collect his salary and will soon have to find a new job. He tells Jennifer that helping these fledgling adventurers will be his last act. Suki then asks if his talent is really that of a strategist, a rare ability. The 3 girls then ask him to join their clan. When Lionel asks why, Suki explains that they became adventurers to help those in need, and since Lionel helped them, they feel he shares their values, so they want to invite him to join. Lionel ponders that perhaps supporting the heroes is his destiny, but he also confesses that he was fired from his old clan for being too straightforward. Mirialia laughs, saying that she actually needs someone like that in her life, while Maisha adds that the 3 of them often have a hard time being straightforward with each other, and having Lionel around would help them get along better. At this point, Lionel realizes that he is truly suited for this group. Lionel reaches out and accepts the invitation to join. He feels pleased to be part of the new clan, but immediately gets to work. Since the clan was running out of money, his first priority was to stabilize his finances. Lionel asks each member to report their current money. Suki has 2 silver coins, Mirialia has 1 gold coin, and Meisha has spent it all on food and donated it to the church. Lionel wonders how they plan to have dinner and realizes that the 3 of them are so carefree that they don't anticipate being kicked out of the guild. He turns to Jennifer and asks if there are any urgent missions. Jennifer says that Hayden Farm is under constant attack by goblins. Lionel picks up a pen and asks his companions about the clan's name. Suki answers that the clan's name is Hope. Lionel feels that it is an ambitious name. As they set out for the farm to face the goblins, Suki declares that the mission will be easy. Lionel warns her not to underestimate the situation, as a goblin can be easily dealt with. But if they are not grouped together, they are very scary. Before they could finish speaking, they heard the sound of goblins approaching. He told the girls to fight as usual so that he could observe. Suki immediately rushed in alone. Actually, he intended to warn them that the heroes should not recklessly charge into the goblins. Mirialia told Lionel to relax and enjoy their legendary battle. Suki leaps over a charging goblin, lands on its back, and quickly cuts off its head. Lionel notices that she is fighting in a wild, chaotic style, relying on agility rather than strategy, a style he finds unsustainable. Another goblin charges at her, hitting her in the back and sending her flying. However, Lionel notices that Meisha quickly casts a healing spell, while Mirialia covers her with a magical missile. After fully recovering, Suki bounces back, eager to charge into battle again. Misha proudly tells Lionel that this is their unbeatable strategy. Suki will draw the enemy close, retreat to heal, and Mirialia will destroy them, then repeat the process as needed. Lionel shouts that so far they have only survived by luck. As Suki is surrounded, Lionel intervenes, slashing a goblin that is about to stab her. He tells her to stay focused, instructing Mirialia to target the fleeing goblins, and asks Meisha to protect the mages and deal with the few approaching goblins. Working as a team, they finish the battle in just 30 seconds, surprising Suki and Lionel. Meanwhile, Lionel wonders when this promising rookie will become the clan's shining hope. Back at the Golden Silk clan headquarters, Luke suggests promoting Fina to vice captain. She feels honored but also hesitant, remembering Lionel as a great person, while Luke only remembers him as a grumbler. Luke asserts that although there are many who could replace Lionel, no one can replace Fina in his heart. Encouraged, Fina accepts the position. On the first floor, the old members overhear the conversation and lament that it is indeed over. Joshua urges everyone to keep the faith, reminding them of a similar situation 5 years ago. At that time, they feared the clan would disintegrate, but still held on to their strong brotherhood. However, Nicole points out that Fina's presence has changed everything. Joshua adds that their captain often jumps to conclusions and acts impulsively, which is why they need Lionel. However, he still believes that the old vice captain will return, and suggests that they take on as many missions as possible while they wait. Nicole is skeptical that Lionel will return as easily as last time. Outside a small house in the countryside, Lionel is cooking, doing laundry, and enjoying the peace and scenery. Suki happily runs out the door, eager to show Lionel the new symbol she embroidered on her outfit. He nonchalantly commented that it suited her, but she urged him to speak with more emotion, replied that they should focus on getting the cloth first, and Suki went inside, acting like a child, following a parent's instructions. Lionel pondered how he had gotten himself into this chore situation. A few days ago, after completing some tasks, the Hope clan was on their way home. They walked along the forest path until they reached a house by the river. However, Lionel was shocked to see that it was just a dilapidated shack. The 3 girls, happy to be home, quickly stripped and jumped into the river to bathe. Lionel, meanwhile, gathered and folded the discarded clothes. They explained that they had no kitchen, so they always ate out, and that none of them knew how to cook. Back in the present, Lionel has set up a clothesline in a desperate attempt to bring order to their lives. He sympathizes with them, understanding that as orphans they are just grateful for a place to sleep. Tasting the soup, he plans to start them on healthy, adventure-ready meals. When Mirialia and Meisha return, they roll out a large black pot. Lionel is pleased, but notices Meisha's mouth watering as she imagines the number of servings she could consume. He explains that it is not for cooking. They place the pot on a pile of rocks, planning to burn wood under it so they can stay warm together. Misha sheepishly admits that she overspent on meat, thinking they would prepare a feast. Lionel is a little annoyed at the wasted money, realized that he wouldn't be able to return to the clan anytime soon, as they would have to take on more quests to earn money. They then found themselves in a grassy field, facing a pack of wolves. Mirialia cast a magic bullet that almost hit Suki. Lionel reminded her to pay attention to the mage's lines of fire. Suki nodded and charged toward the wolves. Lionel smiled with satisfaction and joined her, moving forward. Together they cornered the wolves, while Mirialia continued to cast ranged spells. The wolves, now frightened, began to huddle together. Lionel ordered Suki to follow him, and in his mind he saw their progress since the first battle with the goblins. They were now fighting as a team, using tactics that minimized risk. They forced the wolves closer together, giving Mirialia an opportunity to cast a powerful spell. A wolf tried to sneak up behind her, but Meisha quickly intervened, destroying it, and then immediately cast a long-range healing spell on Suki at the crucial moment. Lionel observed that with the new approach, both the frontline and backline members could fight with confidence. That night, back at the clan house, the Hope clan members celebrated with beer and meat around the bonfire. Meisha ate the meat voraciously, leaving the others wondering how she didn't gain weight. Lionel felt proud of their progress. They could now defeat over 30 monsters and fight from a position of strength. However, he warns them not to be complacent, reminding them that they have only fought in broad daylight and in open spaces. He warns that the real danger of monsters lies in their ability to ambush in the dark, and that they must always be vigilant, or else they will be at risk. Elsewhere, the Golden Silk clan members hear the sound of Dragnic's carriage breaking through the storm. The road ahead is blocked by falling rocks, forcing them to find another way. Luke reluctantly orders them to turn back. While some members mumble that they would not be in this situation if Lionel were there, Luke hears this and angrily orders them not to say such things again. Fina looks out from inside the carriage as Luke sits in the pouring rain. At the Adventurers Guild, Lionel is staring intently at the quest board. Jennifer tells him to stop whining from before, as the other adventurers are waiting to check. He asked if there was any promising work that could help him earn enough money to buy a warm bed and fix the leaks before winter. She suggested that they could map the ruins that had been discovered the day before. Lionel was delighted and signed the papers. Jennifer then shared the latest gossip. The Golden Silk clan had failed their recent mission, arriving 3 days late and delivering the cargo to the royal capital. Lionel guessed that they might have been transporting something important like military supplies, and should have been better prepared for the weather, especially at this time of year. He told the receptionist that they needed to apologize to the customers and rebuild trust, but then he realized that it was no longer his job. After submitting the paperwork, he left, telling himself that he had another group to take care of. Now, there were also rumors of a rebellion, which could provide more lucrative opportunities for future adventurers. Lionel returned home, where he was warmly welcomed by his group. They were eager to know what mission he had taken on, but he tells them to spread out as the floor might collapse if they gather in one place. He explains the mission, which frustrates Suki, as she thought that making maps would be boring. However, Lionel explains that the unexplored ruins may still contain treasures that have not been tarnished by time, and that unknown monsters may lurk within, which piques Suki's curiosity. Mirialia, on the other hand, is worried about encountering a monster ambush, and Lionel wonders if he has scared them too much. Sometime later, they arrive at the ruins, which look like a mid-level old city. Lionel orders them to be extra vigilant, especially in blind spots. Suki steps forward, ready to take the lead as usual. But Lionel stops her. He explains that this is an expedition rather than a battle, and rushing in recklessly could trigger ancient traps. With no information about what they might encounter, safety must be the top priority. Suki acknowledges his concerns but asks him to trust her, assuring you that she trusts you. She asks you to trust her too. Lionel agrees to serve as rear guard while Suki leads, with Mirialia and Meisha following behind. They continued deeper into the ruins, and Lionel began to feel nervous as the place became strangely quiet. Suki confidently reassured everyone, but Mirialia, who was in the middle of the group, began to feel a surge of fear, wondering what kind of monster they would encounter. Just then, a large creature appeared from around a corner. Suki quickly raised her sword and attacked, but it did not do anything. They realized it was a puppet-like creature, looking like a robot, that was advancing towards Mirialia, who stood frozen in fear. Suki quickly pulled the mage out of danger and jumped, intending to smash the puppet. She struck at its head, but the sword did not penetrate, and she realized it was a magical puppet. They would need greater strength to defeat it. Meanwhile, Mirialia was still panicking after witnessing Suki's unsuccessful attack. Completely overwhelmed by fear, she lost focus on her comrade's voice and instinctively cast a spell called Magic Missile, which almost hit Suki. She dodged the attack, but the spell hit the puppet unharmed, leaving Mirialia to watch in horror. Sensing that the battle was not going well, Lionel placed a reassuring hand on Mirialia's shoulder and told her that the first thing they needed to do was calm down. He then instructed Meisha to cast a buff, and with the increased power, Suki is eventually able to slice the puppet in half. They celebrate their victory, but Mirialia still burst into tears. They stop to let her catch her breath, and she explains to Lionel that when things don't go according to plan in her head, she feels lost and doesn't know what to do next. She wished she could be as calm as Suki, or as attentive as Meisha. Lionel gently patted her head and comforted her that it was okay. A magician doesn't need to react as quickly as a swordsman. She needs to always keep an eye on the tempo of the battle and know exactly which spells to use. Facing an unknown monster was the worst situation for her, but Lionel told her that she could rely on him until she became more confident. His words lifted her spirits. Just then, Suki ran back, announcing that Meisha was hungry. Lionel gave them the sandwiches he had prepared. The food makes people feel very delicious. They teased him as the ideal team mother. With full stomachs and renewed spirits, they continued their mission. Moments later, they faced another magical puppet, but this time, Mirialia calmly sealed the magic into Suki's sword, and they easily beat it. After the battle, Mirialia felt a bit sad, thinking about the former residents who once lived in these ruins. Lionel explains that thanks to the magical puppets, the ruins are not overrun by monsters. Help them collect some treasure. As for Suki, she wished that the magical puppets could be a little more unpredictable in battle to add more drama. Then returning home, Lionel divided the state funds and distributed the rest to the team members. With tomorrow being a day off, he advises them to relax but not overspend. Suki wants to go out, but Misha plans to visit the church, and Mirialia will go to the library. Mirialia looked at Lionel with hopeful eyes, and he understood that he would go with her tomorrow. Suki was happy and excited about the idea of having a date with him. The next day, Lionel and Suki walk around the town square. She bought some meat and commented on the size of the houses. Lionel explains that only the wealthy can afford to live within the safe walls of the city. However, she wondered whether the houses were really safe from rats. This causes Lionel to suggest that they get a cat to deal with those pesky rodents. They agreed to visit the cat store. But on the way, Suki is distracted by many sights in the city. That night, they end up at the Travelers Guild canteen, where she teases Lionel for being so frugal, calling him a cheap mother. Lionel replied that the food here is really good. While eating fish, Suki started flirting with him a bit, but their conversation is interrupted when Jennifer announces an urgent mission. At the same time, at a large castle, Luke is having a tense conversation with a high-ranking official. This person criticized Luke for the 3-day delay just because of a rain. This official commented that adventurers could drink freely in the countryside thanks to the order that the royal knights had created. He added that if they had acted sooner, they could have stopped the rebellion before it started. Afterwards, he declared he would never hire the Golden Silk clan again, then slammed the castle door, causing Luke to freeze in anger. After returning to the State House, Luke still couldn't control his anger. Fina tried to comfort Luke, saying it was just bad luck, and he leaned his head against her. Joshua sarcastically commented, bitterly remarking that if their old vice captain were here, he would definitely do everything he could to minimize this problem. Feeling annoyed, he glared at Fina. However, Nicole calmly advised him not to let himself be provoked. Surprised by her composure, Joshua asked why she was so calm. And Nicole revealed that she was leaving the Travelers Guild because she had received a better offer from elsewhere. She even invited Joshua to go with her. He thought for a moment, then decided to go with her. And they held hands, promising not to let themselves fall into the same situation as the old leaders. A large convoy is moving on the road, including members of the Hope clan. Suki wonders if participating in this war is the right decision, as they face someone who has challenged the royal family. Lionel explains that this time the mission is to hunt down the rebel group hiding in the mountains, meaning they will confront humans. Mirialia exclaimed that those rebels were not worthy of being called humans. She even said she needed to brainwash herself to be able to fight. A flashback appears where Jennifer explains that the enemy number is less than 10 people, but they will mobilize about 50 adventurers and mercenaries to scour the mountain. Lionel wondered if a little-known guild like them would be able to participate, but Jennifer reassured them that their achievements so far had earned them this opportunity. Lionel guessed that Jennifer had also intentionally spoken well of them, which he suspected was due to the good deeds he had done. He accepted the quest because the rebel group had a small number of troops, and they would act together with 500 knights, so they actually didn't need to do much to still be able to receive some of the credit. However, the gathering of so many adventurers made Lionel feel like something was wrong, although he couldn't quite pinpoint what it was yet. Lionel told his 3 teammates to prepare themselves and temporarily put aside reason, otherwise it would be impossible to take someone's life. Suki reassured her that there was no need to worry. She would fight with fierce determination, even though it was clear she was just bracing herself to appear strong. Even so, Lionel was still pleased to see that she remembered what he had taught her. Meanwhile, Merle patted himself on the cheek and declared that the mental self-control process was complete. Lionel looked at them with proud eyes, happy to see them more mature. Misha slept the whole way. Upon arriving and setting up camp, Lionel asked if the priestess was okay with this mission. Misha replied that this was like dealing with heretics. He reassured them to speak up if things got too difficult. A knight then asked everyone to be quiet, announced that General Kitos would command the entire army. The general announced they would camp for the night and begin their sweep of the mountain at dawn. While Kitos spoke, Lionel spotted a figure sneaking into the forest. He quickly deduced General Kitos' plan and whispered to his teammates to get the camp ready, because this would be the starting point for the mountain raid. In the general's tent, a knight reported that everything was going according to plan. There were only 90 minutes left until dawn, and preparations for the departure were beginning. Suddenly, outside, fire arrows rained down on the camp, aiming straight at the main camp and logistics units. At this time, Hope Clan stood watching from a safe distance. Lionel explains that a surprise attack on the main camp or supply line is the most effective tactic the rebels can use. Suki asked if there was a traitor, but Lionel replied that this was also General Kitos' plan. The army had no intention of hunting in the mountains. The information about the hunt was only to deceive the rebels, making them think that a surprise attack on the camp was part of the general's strategy. Searching the entire mountain is too dangerous and easy to ambush, so the general revealed the number of troops. Adventurers are not summoned for strength, but simply to fill out the squad. Misha was angry when she found out she was just bait, and Suki and Mirialia were shocked. Lionel then says there is a plan for them to claim glory and asks if they will follow him. At the camp, explosions were heard and warriors were fighting. The knights determined to take with them as many enemies of the royal family as possible. Kyoto saw that. Drawing his sword, he jumped into battle, quickly cleaving one rebel in half and knocking another to the ground. He then ordered his soldiers to surround the enemy. However, another rebel stood up and rushed at the general. Before he could reach his target, the rebel was sent flying by magic. Kitos turned around and saw Hope Clan members ready to assist. Suki and Lionel charged into battle, their swords able to pierce enemy armor, made the knights admire. However, Lionel humbly explains that the secret lies in his sword, which is blessed by Masha's divine power, while Suki's is imbued with Mirialia's magic. Even so, Lionel was still hit in the shoulder by an arrow, but he didn't worry, because the healing appeared at the right time, accompanied by some magic missiles aimed at the enemy. With magical support from afar, two warriors can fight without any worries. Even the general was impressed. He thanked Lionel for saving his life and said he would never forget this favor. Lionel felt honored by the praise. The remainder of the battle went smoothly, and the remaining rebels were captured. After the battle, Hope Clan members knelt before the general. He asked Lionel's name, then praised him for his excellent performance in battle, saying that such talent should not be wasted and invited him to join the army. Lionel remembers how as a child he dreamed of becoming a knight and read about their adventures. But now he has changed. He volunteered to become a guide for the girls. He said he was honored by the invitation, but could serve no one until his 3 companions were equal to him. The general just smiled at his answer, and Lionel felt relieved when he realized the rejection wasn't that big of a deal. Kitos told the 3 girls to be happy to have such a great teacher. Back at the Adventurers Guild, Jennifer informed Hope Clan that a certificate of commendation from General Kitos had arrived. This is an additional reward in addition to all the rewards they already receive. The receptionist noted that a certificate of appreciation sent directly to Lionel was a rare item. He held the sealed envelope in his hand and realized it was an official document that would be recorded in the history books. The 3 girls also received gifts. Suki was given an enchanted sword. Meisha receives an amulet imbued with defensive magic, and Mirialia gains a necklace that enhances her strength. They name their new gifts and celebrate together, while Lionel watches and thinks that if they sell these gifts, they can move to a better place. However, his companions immediately objected to this idea. He tried to reason that their shabby house was not suitable for them when another person entered the society. Lionel looked towards the door and saw his old captain Luke. The old boss approached, then knelt down, waiting for Lionel to return to the Golden Silk clan. Lionel realized that in the past 5 years, everything had not changed. The first time Luke bowed, Lionel worried that he would make the same mistake again. But he came back because he wanted to believe in Luke, as if he were family. Lionel wondered if he was a fool to believe in Luke. He looked at Luke and said if he needed money, he could use the savings Lionel left behind. He added that he would never go back. Luke stroked his head and shouted that Lionel was a close friend. Like family, Lionel just looked at him coldly and asked how Joshua and the others were. He guessed they had left. Now it was just Luke and his beloved vice captain. Luke stood up in rage, his hand on the hilt of his sword. However, 3 Hope Clan girls stood between Lionel and Luke, saying they would not show mercy if he pulled out his sword. With a brave face, Suki stood in front of Luke to protect Lionel, realizing he had completely lost his temper. Luke had to put down his sword and leave the guild. Lionel glanced at him before comforting the worried Suki, saying that she hadn't crossed the line. In fact, she had helped him. Suki wants to ask more about Luke, but Misha stopped her, said it was best not to interfere. Misha added that Lionel would share when he was ready, and Hope Clan has always been their refuge. Suki agreed, and the 3 girls chatted happily. Meanwhile, Luke is struggling, discussing with Joshua and Nicole the possibility of selling the furniture. The 2 protested, adamant that they should try to get Lionel back. However, Luke remains stubborn, believing they can survive by selling their belongings, seeing as the clan is in decline. Fina wasted no time leaving the group to save herself. Later, Luke is left alone when their assets are confiscated. There's nothing left. He wandered aimlessly on the streets. At that moment, he saw Fina smiling happily with another man. Feeling betrayed and angry, he pulled out his sword and slashed Fina's arm. At a nearby tavern, people talk about the fall of the Golden Silk clan. Talks about how the once glorious group has now become a nightmare. They curiously speculated about the former captain's possible arrest and the punishment he would face for his crime. The scene shifts to Luke in a cramped prison, although he escaped the death penalty. But he was sentenced to hard labor because Fina somehow survived his attack. Meanwhile, at the Hope clan house, Lionel is playing with the clan cat. Mirialia, the Lion Queen, tells him to go out and have fun, because he is hindering her cleaning work. Lionel replied that he had no money to spend on pleasure, and suddenly saw a letter on the ground. Mirialia intended to pick up the letter, but Lionel quickly took it and hid it, making her even more suspicious. She teased him, guessing that he was using the money to build a private house and hide love letters. Trying to avoid her curious gaze, Lionel left the family house and went to the guild. Frustrated, he tried tricking Jennifer into letting her treat him to a drink, saying he was thirsty. Jennifer saw through his intentions and said there was no reason for him to be free of her when there was a fountain in the practice field. Feeling discovered, he asked why everyone had been cold towards him recently. Jennifer explained that everyone just wanted to be independent and didn't want to add to his burden. She advised him to drink to relieve his anxiety. While Lionel quenched his thirst at the practice field, he was surprised to see Suki practicing swordplay. He stood and watched, impressed by how much stronger she had become over the past 3 months. When I realized someone was watching, Suki gets distracted and lets her training opponent defeat her. Lionel reminded Suki to rest and not to overexercise. Worried she might get hurt, Suki agreed and teased him, calling him Mama Nell for being a reminder. At that moment, Jennifer appeared, smiled sarcastically, and announced that there was a mission for him. She announced that this was a protection mission from the capital. A merchant requests an escort from the guild. Lionel commented that he had been planning to accept a mission from the capital, so this was a good opportunity. Jennifer agreed and said that the client requested an all-female team, making Hope Clan the right choice. She explained that the client was a woman, and being escorted by an all-male group would be very stressful for her. Hope Clan accepts the mission, and 3 days later they meet their client, Anita, the head of the caravan. They were surprised to discover that her entire team was male. At this time, Misha had a divine premonition and informed Lionel that she was blessed by the Almighty. Feel that this team is hiding evil people. Lionel finds the situation really suspicious, but he says they need evidence to confirm Anita needs help. For now, they have to pretend not to notice anything. He informed Mirialia and Suki, who couldn't lie, and began to suspect that Anita might be a decoy to attract new targets. As the group continued their escort mission, Lionel discussed the route. Explains that because the main road is still damaged from the recent storm, they will have to take a detour. However, because this detour bypasses many places, they will have to camp. A member of the crew told Lionel that he didn't need to be so strict and tense. Lionel countered, saying that they needed to take proper precautions since they were novice adventurers. The delegation praised him for his seriousness and commented that he was different from their commander, Anita, who is quite shy but always has a friendly smile. A man in the group told Lionel that if they were tired, they could rest. However, Lionel and his team already knew that these men were planning to ambush them and had probably committed similar evil acts many times before, targeting female adventurers. Lionel predicts that the next few days will be very difficult, and he was hoping for Meisha's ability to help them. Without a doubt, he suspected the first target would be her, so they had to stay vigilant. When night fell, a member of the group reported that the tents had been set up and suggests that Lionel should let Anita prepare dinner because she is a talented cook. Anita, seemingly having no other choice, was forced to smile and told Lionel to let her take care of dinner. Hope Clan was surprised by the food that Anita prepared. She humbly said asking everyone to forgive her for the simple meal she could make. The entire clan immediately dived into the meal before them, while Anita watched with pity in her eyes. Everyone continued to eat when suddenly Lionel felt a strange feeling in his body, then dropped the food and clutched his chest. Lionel fell to the ground, losing consciousness. Suki screamed for help, but the whole crew started laughing at them, calling them idiots. Especially Lionel for not realizing the poison in his food. They tried to tie up Lionel, but were surprised when he actually regained consciousness and attacked them again. With this, Hope Clan was able to control the caravan. While Lionel was helping his team, he didn't realize a man was about to attack him. At that moment, Anita jumped into action and saved him. In a flashback, we see Anita preparing dinner for the group. Lionel sneaks up behind her and offers to help, saying he usually prepares meals and doing nothing makes him feel restless. Anita refused and tried to persuade him to rest. But Lionel then reveals that he already knows her plan. We'll poison the food. Anita collapsed, apologizing for trying to harm them, and explaining that she was controlled by the merchant. Can't fight them. Lionel comforts her, affirming that he has a plan. In the present, the merchants are angry, unable to believe that Anita could trick them. They angrily berate Lionel for cooperating with Anita, threatening to harm his family's reputation. Not subdued, Lionel countered that he could destroy them, pointing out that they had harmed countless adventurers. He warned that if any of their victims spoke up, the Adventurers Guild would definitely not leave these merchants alone. With that, he decided to bring these corrupt merchants to the capital. This made the three girls extremely excited. Then, in the capital Garangran, Hope Clan was warmly welcomed by the soldiers. Lionel stepped up and introduced himself as the head of the family, and presented the merchants to the authorities. The soldiers praised their efforts and asked them to meet the chief of defense and who had questions for them. With that, Lionel took the lead, driving the carriage into the capital. When they entered the city, the crowd welcomed them with applause, much to the group's surprise and excitement. Lionel watched as the girls enjoyed the admiration and support, continued driving the carriage without anyone noticing his presence, which made him quite disappointed. A few days later, Lionel met General Kaitos, who laughed at his story about being overshadowed by the girls during the surprise parade. Lionel tried to ignore the general's teasing and asked for a favor. When the general agreed to listen to his request, Lionel recounts the incident involving Anita, which Kaitos probably knew about due to recent news. He explained that Anita was suffering from unfair criticism and blame from the public, even though the Adventurers Guild had arrested the real criminals behind the attacks on female adventurers. Lionel humbly requests Kaitos' help to support Anita. Kaitos smiled at Lionel's serious expression, saying that this was an easy request for him, and that he would be happy to help, although he might ask to return the favor someday. Lionel thanked him, replying that he would look forward to repaying the favor with just a small profit, accompanied by a smile. The general guessed that Lionel's resources must be running low if he had to ask for help. Lionel dismissed the comment and took a sip of tea. The general refilled his cup of tea, suggesting that they continue their conversation, this time about the former leader of the Golden Silk Butterfly. Meanwhile, in the prison cell, Luke sat quietly as a soldier came to inform him that he would be met by a noble who would pardon him and release him from prison. You were given half an hour to prepare for this meeting, and once again he was alone, Luke corrected himself, preparing to meet the nobles. As he shaved, he remembered Lionel's encouraging words. In moments of doubt, he smiled to himself, surprised that under these circumstances he still remembered Lionel's words. In the reception area, Luke meets Kaitos, who informs him that his pardon has been accepted by King Morrison. Luke bowed his head in thanks at the mention of the king's name. He wondered why Kaitos would help him, and dared to ask if someone had offered him amnesty. Kaitos replied that he had suggested it to the king. Luke thought to himself, even though he didn't say it out loud, he knew for sure that someone had sent a general to help him. With that person in mind, Luke sneered contemptuously, thinking of Lionel. He remembered how Lionel pushed him away when Golden Silk Butterfly needed him the most, and now his old friend wanted to show him pity. Tensely clenching his fists in anger, he accepted Kaitos' financial help, which he suspects is from Lionel, believing his old friend is mocking him. Later, Kaitos met Lionel again and told him about the sharp, hateful look Luke had given him. Kaitos warns Lionel that his old friend may be targeting him, and suggests that if he were Lionel, he would cut off all ties with Luke to avoid future danger. However, Lionel paid little attention to Kaitos' advice and expressed deep gratitude for his help. Kaitos felt surprised and called Lionel a rather strange person. He then asked about Anita, curious if Lionel planned to recruit her into his clan. Although it was difficult to say, Lionel admitted that he did not have enough money to hire Anita. Kaidos finds this funny, commenting that a talented strategist like Lionel is now falling into poverty. He also suggested that Lionel could become a knight if he wanted to. However, Lionel refuses, saying he cannot abandon the girls. He is their leader and must ensure that they become successful adventurers who can take care of themselves. Seeing that Lionel was in trouble, the general offered help. Lionel looked at the piece of paper Kitos gave him, which details a job assigned to cleaning the villa, with a salary double that of a regular goblin monster hunting mission. Suki commented that the general was very kind, while helping them overcome difficulties, while Mirialia worries about having to repay him in the future. Suki responds that they should thank the general, especially since he seems to like Lionel. However, Lionel expressed concern that if Kitos were caught up in a political conflict, they could suffer. The group of girls think about this, but Suki laughs and says that Lionel is worried again. However, when arriving at the villa, Suki couldn't help but scold the general when she saw the large villa area. The girls laugh and say that Suki should have anticipated a big house with such a high reward. They began to clean up, but Lionel was alarmed when he saw the girls begin to undress to avoid getting their clothes dirty. He scolded them for not bringing a change of clothes. But the girls replied that they had no other clothes. Excited, they run off to clean the mansion, leaving Lionel confused about the situation as the girls continue to clean the inside of the mansion. I'm busy trimming the tall grass, thinking about the great unity and friendship of my clan, hoping that it will always be like that. Looking at the vast garden, he told himself that it would be fun to swim in the lake. At that moment, Suki stuck her head out the window, agreed with him, and suggested that they should do something fun, because cleaning the entire villa will take quite a while. However, Lionel scolded them for working in such light clothes. The girls joked that they wanted to put on their swimsuits and relax, hoping Lionel would let them rest. Lionel pondered another idea. Meanwhile, near the lake, some strange creatures began to appear. Lionel and the girls roamed the market, looking for swimsuits and spare outfits. Suki complains about having to buy proper things while still in debt. Lionel promised that when he returned to the city, he would repay their debt and insisted that the adventurer's equipment be taken care of by the family. Lionel promises that when he returns to the city, he will repay their debt and emphasizes that the adventurer's equipment must be taken care of by the family so that they can unleash their full strength and potential. A good weapon is necessary, and they must have the budget for that. The girls hugged Lionel, thanking him for what he did for them, grateful that he always put their interest first. After buying things, they gathered firewood to make a fire and gathered food to store. Happily imagine the feast of meat they will enjoy. On the way back, Lionel noticed something strange moving in the lake, but he didn't pay attention and continued to follow the girls. After that, the Hope family finished dinner. When Suki noticed the commotion in town, the whole team quickly looked through the window and couldn't help but panic when they heard people screaming for help, calling out that the Sahagin had appeared and attacked. Sahagin is a sea monster that specializes in eating humans as prey. Hearing that, the whole clan immediately prepared their weapons, ready to fight to protect the town from monster attacks. At the same time, in the town, people panicked and asked for help, as the Sahagin took turns killing everyone. A man is eaten by a monster right in front of a child, leaving her terrified. When the monster approached the girl, it began to bite. But at that moment, Suki rushed in and destroyed the monster, saving the girl from impending death. Proudly, Suki declared that she had killed a monster, but Lionel warns her to always be on her guard, for the Sahagin are fierce and agile. Suki nodded, immediately rushing to attack another monster. However, Suki was surprised to see that her blow only caused a shallow wound in the monster's thick skin. Furious, the demon counterattacked with extreme speed and power, attacking her. Realizing that Suki was in trouble, Mirialia immediately intervened and destroyed the monster with her magic. Militia soldiers came to the aid of the Hope family as the soldiers were fighting other Sahagin attacking the town. The group quickly devises a plan to trap and repel the monsters, coordinating with the militia to launch a synchronized attack. Lionel reminds the girls to always be vigilant, emphasizing that the enemy will not disperse easily like goblins. Suki confidently replied that she would handle everything else well. The group continued to fight, pushing more Sahagin back into their territory. The militia completed the strategy, fighting with support from the Hope clan. When dawn came, all the monsters were defeated and the people began to inspect the damage caused by the monsters. Meanwhile, Suki brings Lionel a cup of coffee, thanking him for his efforts in the last battle. Lionel praises Suki for her success in defeating the Sahagin. At this moment, the little girl that Suki had saved earlier approached with her parents, expressing her sincere gratitude for the warrior's help. The girl gave Suki a flower as a thank you gift and wished her luck. Meanwhile, Luke, filled with anger, raised his sword, ready to stab Fina for her betrayal. In her room, Fina wakes up in a nightmare about Luke killing her. She scolded herself for being paralyzed by fear when survival was the only choice. But she realized with horror Luke was not a ghost. He appeared at the window, gently descending from the sill. He threw her a bag of gold to help her cover her injuries. Fina refuses his pity, taking it as a sign that he will never stop haunting her. She taunted him, saying that if he really killed her, he would become a traitor, abandon his friends, and kill his lover. Luke, angry and pushed to the limit, finally stabbed Fina with his sword, ending her life. She hugged him one last time and said they would meet again in hell. With a distorted expression, Luke promised to follow her down there, but not right now, but to face his best friend and pay the price for his kindness. At Kaidos' house, Lionel is stunned to learn that the mayor of the town they just saved from monsters insists on awarding them medals of honor for their heroic deeds. The general added that there was no need for them to continue the cleanup work, as the town's heroes could not be left to do the job. Additionally, there will be a reception in their honor. However, all felt hesitant to attend, remembering those who had died in battle. Misha reminded them that despite their losses, they had saved thousands of people's lives and livelihoods, and no one could criticize them for celebrating their victory. After thinking carefully, the girls agreed to join the party. Lionel watched quietly, pleased to see the girls' spirits had been lifted. Afterwards, Lionel changed into a smart suit, highlighting his charm, and Kaidos complimented his appearance. Insists that Lionel deserves the town's gratitude for helping defeat the Sahagin, a feat that even the town's soldiers struggled to accomplish with minimal casualties. However, Lionel humbly refused the compliment, giving credit to the girls who fought and defeated the enemy. At this moment, 3 girls walked in, each wearing her best outfit. Seeing their joy, Lionel could not contain his emotions, as if he were introducing his daughters to society. He just hopes they can live more comfortably and enjoy their youth. The mayor soon approached Lionel and chatted with him. He expressed admiration for Lionel's ability to lead a small team to success. At the same time, do not forget to recognize the efforts of people in standing up to protect their homes and the people they love. Lionel said he was willing to do anything, and although his strength lies in his strategic abilities, he uses it to protect those important to him. The 2 older men praised him for being a great teacher to these outstanding girls, realized that it was thanks to Lionel's guidance that they had grown so much. The mayor then noticed that Lionel was drinking but not eating and invited him to try the food. Lionel savored a bite, taking in the flavors and pausing to admire the meal. However, Kaidos approached and broke his moment of relaxation with a serious expression. The general informed him that after the party, they need to return because Fina has been killed. Fear suddenly appeared on Lionel's face when he realized who was responsible for this death. He felt sorrow for his friend, who was now completely consumed by the darkness within him. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, Luke was causing trouble with a crazy expression on his face. He asked to become the leader of a group of robbers. But the bandits thought he was crazy and ignored him. To prove that he is not someone who can be underestimated, Luke swings his sword and kills a member of the group, scaring them. This brutal scene caused the rest of the group to agree to obey him without daring to resist. A girl stood in the dark, witnessing Luke's cruelty. Back at the guild, Jennifer thanks Lionel's group for helping capture the corrupt merchants, at the same time admitting shortcomings in the association's supervision work. To express her gratitude, she gave an additional bonus. Although Jennifer appeared to know nothing about the corruption of the merchants, Lionel was certain she had known before giving her this mission. As cunning as she was, she must have sent Hope's group because she believed they could complete the mission. Lionel then asked Jennifer about Fina's recent murder and if they confirmed Luke was the one responsible. Jennifer sighed, explaining that they couldn't be sure, as there was no physical evidence and no signs of struggle on Fina's body. However, Jennifer has another clue. The most famous criminal group in the city had recently changed leaders, and her intuition was that it was Luke. Even though she had no real evidence, she still believed her feelings. Lionel temporarily dismissed this information as it had not been confirmed and left the guild. At the group's house, Lionel and the girls are surprised to see that their pet cat, Lion King, has brought home a female feline friend. Lionel looked at the male cat unhappily, but the girls argued that perhaps he felt lonely in the house and had invited a friend over. The girls begged Lionel, and he finally sighed and agreed to keep both cats. In return, he asked the girls to clean the house while he went out to take care of some things. Lionel then goes to meet the moneylender who lent the girls the loan. The powerful man directed him to a lady named Mary who financed the loan. Lionel offers to pay off the debt so the girls have more money for their needs. Impressed by Lionel's dedication, Mary praises him as a leader who truly cares about his team members. Thinking of the girls, Lionel smiled proudly at their achievements. Lionel shared that the girls also taught him a lot about life, and he felt extremely grateful to them. Pleased by his words, Mary found the promissory note and tore it in front of Lionel, said she wanted to support the girls. She refused to repay the debt, saying she had feelings for them and felt pity for them as orphans. When she met Lionel, she realized how lucky they were to have someone like him who truly cared about them. With the debt problem resolved, Lionel decided to stop by the Hunters Guild to check on available quests before going home. On the way, he accidentally bumped into a girl. She tried to steal his bag. However, Lionel was very alert and quickly stopped her plan and controlled her. Realizing the girl was just a child, he let her go and even suggested that if she needed help, she could find him at the Hunters Guild. The girl was surprised to discover that her bag of money was missing. Lionel had secretly taken it without her knowing. She rushed to the Hunters Guild to confront him about stealing her wallet. Lionel smiled, waved the wallet in front of her face, saying he took it by accident with a sarcastic smile on his lips. But he quickly got serious and asked her directly what she wanted from him. Lionel deduced that this girl definitely had a purpose in approaching him, because if it wasn't important, she wouldn't dare risk being arrested. The fact that she confidently entered the Hunters Guild also showed that she knew who he was. The girl was surprised at how easily he guessed her intentions, admitted defeat, and realized who he was when he was famous as the greatest strategist in the city. Cornered, she apologizes for their previous encounter and introduces herself as Meg, a member of the city's famous bandit gang. She is a member of Hawk Blade, a gang often viewed as a danger by society. She explains that even though they have a bad reputation, they do everything they can to survive. Meg went on to explain that since no one was willing to help them, her group was forced to rely on unsavory tactics. However, she now seeks Lionel's help because the Hawk Blade bandits fell into Luke's hands. This information surprised and stunned Lionel. He felt horrified when he learned that Luke had become the leader of a gang of robbers. Meg reports that the gang has fallen into chaos since Luke appeared, and many of her comrades have been killed by Luke himself. She was lucky to escape and now begged Lionel's help. Believes he is the only one who can stop Luke because he knows Luke better than anyone. Lionel agreed, but he did not feel he had the right to intervene in the war between the bandits. He fears that Luke's reputation, a former adventurer hero, will make things even more complicated if he doesn't act now. Lionel turns to Jennifer for advice. She quickly took a piece of paper from the drawer, scribbled down a new mission for him. Hunt down the person who killed her teammate, Fina. She stamped the official seal of the Adventurers Guild on the paper and handed it to Lionel, asking if he would accept the quest. Jennifer added that they knew the villain was caught up in a territory war between bandits, and that he was the former leader of the Golden Silk Butterfly. Lionel pretends it's just a game of fate and asks Meg for information. Meg smiled and teased him, declaring that her information had a high price. The great strategist replied that he promised to restore her bandits to glory. That night, Lionel sat outside the clan house, sipping a drink and thinking deeply about his worries. He thought about how he acted like a brave hero when he accepted the mission. But in reality, deep down inside, the only thing he wanted was to have the good days with his best friend again. He recalls that when he saved Luke from prison, he thought they would have a happy life as farmers, far from adventure. Now Lionel feels foolish for not realizing how strong Luke's resentment was, eventually causing him to become a monster. He wondered if he was wrong in asking Luke's forgiveness from Kaidos. Lionel believes that if Luke continues to rise in the underworld, a confrontation between him and the Adventurer Guild would be inevitable. I imagine the city of Garia will fall into ruins. Although he himself did not care about the balance of power between the forces, he was sad, because a civil war would only create more orphans, like him and Suki. Lionel raised his head and looked up at the night sky, remembering the image of Luke who once cared for orphans during conflicts. When he closed his eyes, he saw an image of himself and Luke as children, innocent and happy together. He remembered one day at the orphanage when Luke punched him in the face. When Lionel fell to the ground, Luke said he always hated him for always meddling in everything and taking the spotlight. Suddenly, Luke tripped and fell face down on the ground. He didn't realize that Lionel had tied his shoelaces together. The situation has changed. Now Lionel is the one standing. He told Luke that he was stupid for only focusing on his insult and not realizing what had happened. Lionel reiterates that he is older than Luke, so their argument becomes about who should listen to whom. An orphanage worker saw them fighting and punished them by not letting them eat dinner that night. That night, Luke lay in bed, unable to sleep because he was hungry and blamed Lionel for it. Lionel came closer and gave him a piece of cake he got from the canteen. Luke asks why Lionel shares if he can eat the whole piece of cake by himself. Lionel replied that he would feel sorry if Luke collapsed just because he didn't give him any food. Luke compliments Lionel for always knowing the right words to say. And Lionel also praised Luke for always being the one to comfort the other children when they cried. Luke admits that he just wants to help people who are in trouble. Luke's eyes shine with a strong determination to realize his dream, and he promises that one day he will have enough strength to help all the children in the world. Back to the present, Lionel is looking at his reflection in the blade. He told himself that he needed to stop living in the past. Instead, he envisions the monster Luke has become and prepares himself to be the one responsible for taking him down. He wondered if he had enough strength to win a fight to the death, when both are swordsmen. I understand that Luke has the advantage in strength and speed, while he possesses elite foresight and tactical abilities. Lionel recalls the times the two often fought as children and compared it to the bloody fight to the death between adults who were responsible. Responsibility. Suki and the others saw him sad from a high window. Suki jumped out of the window. Lionel caught Suki as she jumped down and hugged her. She tells him that daughters cannot just sit still when the mother is suffering. She asks him to share his problem with them so they can help together as a team. Her face was filled with tears, pain, and anger that Lionel did not share his sadness with them. Lionel apologizes, and the girls are happy that he is finally willing to tell them about his problem. Lionel told the girls the story, and they were angry that he hid something so important. Lionel explained that it was a personal matter, and he didn't want to get the girls involved. The girls responded that they would be happy to help him, since they were a team. Lionel realized that they had used his words as a weapon, so he could no longer defend himself. Suki asked about his plan to find the hideout of Luke's bandit gang. The next morning, Lionel introduces the girls to Meg. The girls were happy to meet a new friend, and they all excitedly introduced themselves to the thief. Meg tells the group that Luke's hideout is deep in the slums. She warns that they need to be careful when entering the slums, which are filled with enemies and assassins. However, despite the warning, the girls still had fun, like they were preparing for a picnic. Meg commented that they were so strange. Instead of being worried, they laughed and thought that the name Hope really suited them. That evening, the group arrived at an abandoned mansion. Meg tells them that this used to be a mansion of a noble family before the area became a slum. Lionel checked on the girls again and saw that they were all prepared for what was to happen in the house. He kicked open the front door and entered. A figure stood in the darkness inside. Lionel enters and sarcastically greets Luke, asking if the master of the house can come in. Luke responded calmly and said he was welcome to come in. Lionel orders his group to be alert for danger, but Lionel tells them not to worry because there's no one in the mansion but him. Immediately, Lionel drew his sword and let the sheath fall to the floor, signaling that he was ready to end things between them once and for all. Suki gives Lionel a sword and says she will keep the sheath. Lionel looked at the blade in his hand, remembering that it was an extension of his own life. He looked at the girls, saw them holding the sheath safely in their hands, and told himself that the sheaths were where life returned, promising that he would go there, as if he knew that the girls were where he belongs. Both men prepare to fight. Lionel looks at Luke's sword scabbard on the ground, disappointed to see he has thrown away his home. Both stepped up, preparing to strike first. When their swords collided, the force of the blow caused the dark room to glow. The two stepped back to regain their balance. Luke asked his opponent why he was surprised when he entered. Lionel replied that he did not expect that there would be no one else here because, according to rumors, Luke had taken over a gang. Luke admits that he took over leadership initially, but then all the members left. He intentionally violated the bandits' rules, all just to create a plan that makes the bandits call Lionel for help. Lionel praises him for preparing the perfect stage for this dramatic match. Luke felt honored to be praised by such an excellent strategist. Their swords collided again, creating a standoff. Lionel continues to attack and asks if Luke's plan was all just to watch him plunder. Luke dodged the attack and replied that he did it because he still considered Lionel a friend. Their swords continued to clash. Lionel ended up with a scratch on his arm. Although he avoided the attack, Lionel counterattacked and the sword cut Luke's cheek. Lionel remembers when he and Luke were 10 years old, having just received a blessing in church. Luke compliments Lionel for receiving the strategist skill, saying it suits him well. Luke reveals that he too has been blessed to become a hero, which intrigues Lionel. Luke declares he wants to be an adventurer, then held out his hand with a smile, hoping Lionel would always be by his side. They shook hands, determined to conquer the world together. Back to the present, when the two were hurting each other with the blades in their hands, Lionel saw an opening and prepared a fatal blow. However, Luke just smiled confidently. Suddenly, he used his knee to attack his opponent's stomach. The blow was so strong that Lionel coughed up blood and collapsed. While Lionel was on the ground, Luke swung another blow. Lionel dodged and reached for his sword on the ground. Luke said that as a strategist, Lionel certainly knew that he was not using tricks, but was simply uncompromising. Lionel still tried to stand up, said nothing, just smiled at his steadfast argument. Still kneeling, Lionel replied that he would not speak out about what Luke had just done. smiling while knowing that I'm no better. Suddenly, Meisha cast a recovery spell and Miralia cast a strengthening spell. With their power, Lionel fully recovered, and in his hand was a sword glowing with new power. Luke was angry, complaining that this was not a 3-on-1 match. But it turns out Suki was behind Luke, ready to swing her sword. In midair, the girl corrected him. Actually, it's 4 against 1. Luke blocked the attack but stepped back. He faced Lionel again, who was ready to strike. Luke was just able to block it, but was still pushed back by the force. Luke looked towards the Hope clan, who were teaming up against him. A flashback appeared in his mind about that night, when they decided to work together to find Luke. Suki asked Lionel if they could fight together in a match. They all agreed that it wouldn't be a problem if they all joined in to deal with Luke. But they will retain the atmosphere of a single match to surprise the enemy. Back to the present, Luke is overwhelmed, facing Lionel and Suki from both sides at the same time. And all he could do was avoid it. He saw the main door and hurried out. Miralia fired a magic bullet, hitting his left knee, injuring him, and slowed his pace enough for Suki to catch up, cutting off his sword hand. Luke felt this atmosphere was familiar. Lionel rushed from the front and stabbed his sword into his chest. At this moment, Luke realized that he was in the same scene that he caused to Fina, but this time it was him. As his strength gradually ran out, Luke looked at Lionel and said, "We were supposed to conquer the world together." Lionel asked Luke what he would engrave on his tombstone. Luke replied that he didn't need anything. No need for a tomb. He fell to the ground, eyes wide open, lifeless. Lionel reached out and closed his eyes so he could rest in peace. He stood over the body of his old friend, looked up at the moon, sad that the friendship ended this way. He wondered if there was anything he could do to stop it all. Suki hugs him, saying she will always be with him. Miralia hugs from behind, said that she was also by his side. Meisha walked over and also said that she would always be by his side. Meg watched from afar, feeling embarrassed, but also said she would stay with him. The girls looked at Meg, mocking that she wasn't part of this moment. Then all laughed happily with Meg. Lionel looked at the smiling girls, feeling warm at the sight. They planned to return to ask the church and guild to handle the consequences. They returned to the Adventurers Guild, where Jennifer congratulated them on a job well done. When he saw that Meg was still with them, she shyly admitted that she had been kicked out of the Bandit Guild. They asked her how this was possible when she was important in destroying Luke. Meg explains that Guild Bandit is narcissistic, because she went to the Adventurers Guild to solve everything for them. Lionel realizes that the Bandit Guild has secretly rewarded her, setting her free from a life of crime as thieves. Meg thought about the new opportunity and asked if she could join them. She asked if they had any problem with her request, but before that, Lionel asked her what skills she had been blessed with. Meg doesn't understand what a blessing is, surprising the group. Suki tries to explain to Meg about the blessing, but even though she makes all kinds of strange sound effects and movements, Meg still doesn't understand. Lionel then explains that the talent or blessing is a divine revelation that a child receives when he turns 10 during a blessing ceremony. Then, the person chooses a career. For example, Lionel said that his talent is as a strategist, while his profession is as a swordsman. Finally, Meg understood. She felt sad because she didn't know what was just a normal thing for them. That made her feel like she had wasted her life, an orphan taken advantage of by the Bandit Guild. The 3 girls felt sympathy for her, crying for her, and hugging her tightly at the same time. While comforting Meg, the group said that they hoped she could get her life back from here on out. Meg was so surprised by this warmth that she felt like she was trapped in their tight embrace. Then they took Meg to the church in town. The priest informs Lionel that there are many children out there like Meg, who have never received a blessing. The priest turned to Meg and said he would help her prepare for the blessing. Meg shyly reminded him that she didn't know any rituals or prayers. Misha comforted Meg, saying she would guide her when she needed to pray. Suki also reassured Meg that she would help throughout the process. Suki laughed as she remembered Masha's blessing ceremony and how she was so nervous that she moved her right hand and right leg at the same time. Misha blushed, confused, and continuously denied the incident that Suki mentioned. Meg smiled brightly with the girls, and Lionel also couldn't contain his joy when he saw Meg happy. They entered the ceremonial hall where Meg, wearing a veil on her head, prayed with Masha. The priest then led Meg to the front of the hall. She knelt to pray, while the priest stood before her reciting religious vows. Suddenly, a bright light shined down from above, surrounding Meg. In this sacred moment, Meg felt the divine presence. Tears fell down her cheeks. She confessed that for the first time in her life, she had just heard the voice of a god. Later, at the Adventurers Guild, Meg excitedly told the group that she had just been blessed with the agility skill. However, she did not know what it really meant. Lionel explains that this is a talent that specializes in speed. Jennifer gave Meg the scout application form and asked her to fill in the information. Meg embarrassedly admitted that she did not know how to read or write. Lionel helped her complete the form and confirmed that all the information he recorded was correct. Meg was excited to see Lionel write that she was a member of Hope. She apologized to him for having to ask him to write for her. Lionel replied seriously that she didn't need to worry about that. With a quiet face, he admitted that he was angry at the bandits for taking advantage of orphans without teaching them any skills to survive in life. Mirialia happily said that their mother was still the man who always stood up for others in anger. She went on to list his good qualities, such as his steadfast loyalty, gentle soul, and many others. This caused the other girls to join in, racing to list Lionel's countless good qualities. Even Jennifer chimed in, saying he was always precise in every task and had a sharp intellect. All the girls told Lionel in unison that he was a wonderful man. Lionel was so embarrassed that he ran out the door. A moment later, he returned and changed the subject by reminding everyone to prepare the ingredients for Meg's welcome party later. He was so embarrassed that Jennifer couldn't help but burst out laughing. That evening at home, the Hope family raised a glass of beer to celebrate. The feast looked so delicious that Meg could only gulp as she watched, while the other girls were busy munching. Meanwhile, Meg talked to Lionel, asking about her role in the group. Lionel thought for a moment and then assigned her a reconnaissance mission. He explains that his mission is to find lucrative jobs to raise the group's reputation in town. The girl was happy to hear that and promised to help the group win big contracts. Meanwhile, below the maze, a giant monster with a body like an elephant, but possessing 3 heads, a lion, a dragon, and a goat, is attacking a group of adventurers. These people were forced to retreat, knowing that they could not deal with the terrifying creature known as the Chimera. At the Adventurers Guild, Lionel and Meg were looking at the quest board, but both are disappointed because there are currently very few jobs suitable for them. Jennifer explains that the number of missions is small for a reason. She then praised Meg for practicing her information-gathering skills so well today. Meg was both embarrassed and happy at the compliment, but then she and Lionel suddenly became frightened, realizing that Jennifer was just hedging ahead because she was about to give them a scary task. Jennifer sadly admits they guessed right. She reports that a chimera has taken over the Lacris maze. Not only that, the elite guild team tasked with exploring deep below is currently trapped because of the monster blocking the way up. They discuss chimeras, a goat head that can shoot magic, a lion head that has the power to crush rocks, a dragon head that breathes fire, and the snake's tail carries deadly venom. Lionel signed up the Hope family for the mission as if the monster was nothing to him. Meg, trembling with fear, screamed and protested him, making a decision so quickly for the group. Lionel explains that someone needs to act fast because it's been half a month since the guild below was cut off from the outside world, and they're probably exhausted. Although he was not one to pursue justice, he trusted Jennifer's assessment that they could complete the mission. Lionel also explains to Meg that he trusts his 4 companions. Meg blushed, feeling like he didn't believe her. Jennifer teased that Lionel had the ability to make girls flutter without even realizing it. Lionel watched them whisper to each other without understanding what they were saying. At Lacris Labyrinth, Team Hope is exploring the dungeons. Meg spots 2 poison rats ahead. So she rolled poison balls near them to further poison them, while they were weak from the poison. Lionel orders Mirialia to launch magical projectiles at the rats. She followed suit, taking them down completely. Once the monsters fell, Lionel and Suki rushed in to finish them off. After clearing the danger, the group moved forward. At the same time, pick up magic stones the size of baseballs from the corpses of defeated monsters. Lionel remembers the time he entered this maze when he was on the Silk Butterfly team. But at that time, the number of monsters was not as large as now. Meg held the magic stone in her hand, unable to believe that she could turn it into money because before she always had to steal to get it. Suki is excited for Meg and encourages her to keep trying. She raised her sword and told Meg that one day she too would have one, when she had made a name for herself. Suki proudly shows off that her sword was a reward from General Kaitos after she defeated a group of rebels. Meg was so excited that her eyes sparkled. From his familiarity with the area, Lionel knew that they were close to the Great Door. His group guessed that the reason there were so many monsters was because the Chimera had caused many monsters to retreat to the upper floors. As they approach the door, a sense of gloom prevailed, and before opening it, Lionel makes a battle plan. He and Suki will lead the attack. When Chimera is negligent, Mirialia will use magic to destroy the lion's head. While it was in pain, Meg would blind the three heads, and in that moment, they would end the battle. When they opened the door, everyone's hair stood on end because the Chimera was already standing there looking at them, preparing to attack. Lionel and Suki rushed in first. They avoided the dragon's fire and split up. Suki would attack the left side of the monster and Lionel would attack the right side. While the Chimera was busy chasing them, Mirialia began to perform magic, using ice blades to cut off the lion's head in the middle. As the Chimera writhed in pain, Meg threw daggers at the remaining eyes, each one hitting with precision. In the final moment, Meisha cast a spell that created chains of light, wrapped tightly around the Chimera, making it unable to move. While being restrained, Suki rushed to attack. The force of the blow severely injured the monster. However, that also caused her to open a hole, and the Chimera's snake tail prepared to bite her with deadly venom. Before it could approach, Lionel rushed in and cut off the snake's head. Meanwhile, the magical chains are slowly breaking as Meisha can no longer maintain the magic. Mirialia summoned ice spears, and sharp spears appeared from under the monster's body, piercing, causing the Chimera to jump in midair. The monster was attacked by a barrage of ice and ice. The dragon head prepares to breathe fire just as the Chimera falls to the ground. We arrive at the final moment. Meg threw a knife onto the dragon's nose, preventing its mouth from opening. The energy inside its mouth swelled until it exploded from the inside. Lionel and Suki immediately attacked vigorously, attacking the monster from many directions. Its giant hand clawed at Suki's knee. She was treated with magic by Misha. At the same time, Lionel was also injured by the monster's claws. Mirialia summons magic bullets to attack the monster. While she was enduring the pain, Lionel and Suki continued to attack it. Finally, the monster fell, smoke rising from the strong impact with the ground. They were both exhausted, but at the same time, felt relieved. Meanwhile, Meg is busy cutting apart Chimera's parts, eager to find a rare magical stone. She was disappointed to discover that the stone was only the size of a baseball like the smaller monsters. She cried out of frustration and the girls comforted her. They went down, rescued the trapped explorers, and brought them to the surface. They were surprised to see the entrance to the maze full of people waiting to welcome the rescued people. One of them is Lionel's old friend. Lionel introduces him to the girls as Rhinos, leader of the hard-boiled gang. The man was happy to see Lionel again and said he wanted to do something to thank Lionel for saving the trapped adventurers. Lionel asked him to provide wood because he was planning to build a dressing room. In his mind, this would be a great relief because girls always walked around freely without paying attention to their clothes in front of him. Rhinos comforted him because of this suffering. No one knows that above, a ghostly eye is watching them. Elsewhere, a ghostly humanoid creature is looking at them through a crystal ball. This man with horns on his head felt frustrated because the Hope Gang had ruined his plans to retake his people's ancestral land. Lionel was sleeping when he suddenly heard a voice calling his name. He opened his eyes and saw Suki, Mirialia, and Meisha standing over him to wake him up, with very little clothing. He screamed in alarm at the sight and demanded to know why they were wearing so little. A few days ago, Lionel showed the Rhinos that he had finished building the dressing room, and also made a bed for Meg and a tower for their pet cat. He informed the girls that they had a dressing room. However, the girls seemed more annoyed than happy. Back to the present, the girls are extremely happy, standing naked in front of Lionel. Lionel immediately opened the cupboard and quickly dressed the girls. Meg witnesses the scene and tells Lionel that she doesn't judge him for his strange taste. Lionel couldn't take it anymore, so he left breakfast for the girls and prepared it. Go out to the Adventurers Guild. Before leaving the door, he ordered them to eat the stew he had prepared for lunch. This makes the girls think that he is really their mother. At the Adventurers Guild, Jennifer reports to Lionel that the monsters in Jeria are increasing in number and becoming stronger. She worries that if their numbers continue to increase, they will soon attack the town in search of food. This made Lionel think of the Chimera and its unusual appearance. He also noticed that the other monsters in the maze were surprisingly strong. He worries that these are bad signs indicating that the Demon King may be preparing to take action. Lionel remembers the Great War between humans and ghosts 500 years ago, and worry that this conflict may be about to start again. Jennifer asks Lionel to investigate and points to the map to indicate his next destination, the ruins of Piran, which was also the home of the ghostly tribe 500 years ago. This place is now ruined and forgotten. Jennifer reminded that although their theory is currently just a hunch, according to the woman's intuition, she feels they are on the right track. Leon pondered Jennifer's reasons, but he believed that what she called a woman's intuition was actually a talent given to her. She officially confirmed the mission by asking Clan Hope to investigate the increase in monsters in the ruins of Piran. Meanwhile, in the night sky, a shooting star is falling. In a dark castle, an old woman with elvish ears told her mysterious teacher of an apparition. Of a falling star is a good omen for monsters, but also a harbinger of the destruction of humanity. The mysterious master accepted and declared that it was indeed a good omen for the monsters. The old woman addressed the teacher as Majesty Demon King Ingril. Elsewhere, in the land of demons, a magician is summoning an army of the undead. The person responsible was none other than the monster that was watching Clan Hope in the labyrinth. He smiled smugly, confident that his plan would not fail this time. He reveals his final summon, which is a skeleton in royal robes called the Mighty Undying Leech. At Clan Hope's headquarters, their group was gathered around a table, studying the map. They calculated that it would take 12 days of walking to reach the abandoned castle of Piran. They noted that it was located right on the border of the Masu Kingdom, nation of monsters, further reinforcing suspicions that the Demon King's army is on the move. However, Lionel speculates that there may be magical relics left in the castle that have been corrupted, leading to the proliferation and enhancement of monsters, and that the monsters may have nothing to do with the Gamoid. However, they will find out the real reason when investigating. They started their journey, and everything was quite peaceful. They bonded together through nights around the campfire, sometimes even enjoying delicious meals. One evening, while the group was sleeping at an inn, Lionel heard a strange sound. He immediately drew his sword and jumped up from the bed. It turned out to be Meg, who had come into the room to say she felt uneasy as if they were being watched. He asked her to check outside the window, but the fog was too thick for her to see anything. He then told her to wake up the remaining members, prepare for battle, and gather in their room. Lionel deduced from the strange fog that they were facing a leech. He patted Meg's head, saying that thanks to her, they wouldn't be surprised. The compliment made her blush with joy and appreciation. Then she rushed out of the room to warn the others. Meanwhile, Lionel approached the window, thinking their first concern would be the zombie soldiers. Luckily, the undead weren't smart enough to open doors or smash windows, so the guests in the inn would definitely be safe. The black mist began to slowly dissipate, revealing undead monsters flocking towards them. However, the Hope clan was now ready and armed, waiting in front of the inn. Meg senses that the zombies do not feel anger, but jealousy towards life. Suki excitedly rushes into battle, but Lionel orders her to wait. Mirialia will be the one to attack first from afar. She chants spells and summons fiery spears aiming at multiple targets and setting the zombies ablaze. Meg contributes by throwing a bowl of flammable liquid into the burning zombies, causing them to burst into flames, burning more enemies. Meanwhile, Misha chants the sanctuary spell, creating a magic circle around her. A flash of light melted all the undead inside, turning them into dust. Everyone was surprised by this ability. Misha said it was a priest-level skill. However, she felt very hungry afterward, and everyone gave her some snacks to help her recover. Suki tells the 3 remaining girls to rest because now is the time for her and Lionel to take action. She pulled out her sword and quickly slashed the zombies in front of her, opening the way for Lionel to attack the leech. She teased him that if he thanked her, he would kiss her. Lionel replied that he would do so when she grew up. Meanwhile, the leech did not expect that he would encounter a hero right at this inn. This city was supposed to be the starting point for his invasion, where he would turn the people into part of his undead army. Lionel did not listen and rushed to attack Leech, the undead monster. He stabbed the sword straight in, and Leech realized too late that it was a holy weapon. He regretted being surprised, but his magic was exhausted. There's nothing left to do but crumble into ash, blown away by the wind. Lionel stood firm, victorious like a true hero. Lionel steps out into a clearing and sees a mural of the ruined Piran castle. He checked the map and wondered if the leech came from this place. The area between the castle and the town is completely deserted, so the leech cannot turn anyone into an undead. Therefore, he had to use summoning magic, which caused his power to be depleted when they fought him. He targeted the roadside inn, intending to turn the people there into his undead soldiers. Lionel realized that it was lucky they were able to stop his plans, and if he could actually increase his army, it would be terrifying. Mirialia wondered if it was just a coincidence. Suki told her not to think too much because luck is a part of life. Misha added that it's actually not that complicated. They then plan their next move, and Meg says she will take over as leader if they need to move stealthily. However, Lionel affirmed that they did not know what was inside, or how many people were hiding, or who was ruling the castle. So he said they would have to go straight to the main door. Suki was happy to hear that, but Mirialia was a bit worried. The strategist explains that it is a lost traveler tactic. If the castle's owner is a good person, they will not abandon someone in need of help. If they are bad guys and have taken over the castle, they will want to interrogate the intruder. Either way, they will be allowed into the castle. Suki then wondered if their outfits would attract attention, since they clearly looked like adventurers. Lionel replied that it was not a problem because it would be strange for traders to be in this remote area, and their gender ratio was too strange to pretend to be refugees. So it could just be adventurers exploring this area of the Monster King's base. Mylene approaches her master with dire news. The Orb of Domination has been stolen from the treasury. The offender left a farewell letter before taking his own life, but the whereabouts of the orb remains a mystery. The old woman wondered if the war-thirsty nobles were losing patience, because the previous Monster Kings were always ready to attack at any time. She proposed that this is the time to reclaim the lands that have been occupied by humanity. Additionally, she heard whispers of dissatisfaction with the current king's moderate views. Ingril thoughtfully listened to the old woman's long words. He thought that his father and grandfather never intended to invade, but were just pretending to prepare for war. Most monsters are satisfied with their lives. Moreover, it is warm here, the crops are lush. Why give up that life just to invade a cold, poor human kingdom? The old woman saw that her words were going in one ear and out the other, and angrily shouted, asking if he was listening. Ingril told the old woman to take care of her health and suggested she rest a bit. The old woman left the room but did not forget to scold him that he would be the cause of her death. Ingril then turned to Mylene, saying that sometimes he really wanted to make fun of people who only talked about war all the time. The younger generation of monsters cannot understand the previous generation's hatred towards humans. Ingril mused that the elders were probably still bitter that their land and culture had been taken away from them. This is probably also the reason why the pearl was stolen. He thought the thief's death seemed suspicious, and directed Mylene to ensure the rest of the person's family was adequately cared for while continuing the investigation. Mylene agrees, saying that they must extinguish this fire immediately before it spreads among the population. She ordered her soldiers to be alert for any unusual movements, especially in the wilds of Garia. Her soldiers immediately teleported away. Left alone, Ingril looked at Mylene with gentle eyes and said that it was fortunate that he had replaced her as leader. She moved closer, preparing to have a private moment. Was interrupted by a female monster who remained standing and causing a nuisance. Mylene said that she should have disappeared as soon as she received the order. The two women argued for a while, then Mylene said that she had already given the order, so why were her subordinates still here? Salieri replied that she would rather sneak into the darkness, because that would be a more interesting mission. Mylene asked the reason, and the female monster replied that the leader had trusted and allowed Salieri to go abroad and explore mysteries. However, she must be careful not to act hastily when meeting someone who catches her attention. Salieri saluted, said, "Yes, sir," with a mischievous look in his eyes, and then disappeared. Hope Clan headed straight for the castle gate, but were stopped by a guard, asking them to reveal their identities. Lionel feigned innocent, saying they were lost adventurers. Then he noticed the horns on the guard's head and realized he was a monster. People in the capital consider them mortal enemies of humanity. But in Goria, it's different. Goria's economy thrives on secret trade with the monster kingdom of Maslur. The monster offered Count Druss conditions, promising to provide enough education and support for orphanages. As a result, this industry developed strongly and received many subsidies. There are also those who collect children for profit, or those who seek refuge in the Thieves' Guild. Some people feel disgusted at the mention of monsters. Lionel decided to be cautious, asking the guard if they could ask for shelter for the night. The guard was surprised at first, but then smiled and welcomed them inside. He led them to the living room. Mirialia was surprised that they got in so easily. This is where the real challenge begins. As Lionel said, they will need to adapt to any situation that may arise. Once inside, Meg will pretend to go to the bathroom and conduct reconnaissance inside the castle. Meisha and Suki, under the guise of those attending the worship service, will memorize the path leading to the cathedral. Mirialia will stay with Lionel to plan. They have 30 minutes until meal, so Lionel asked them to return in less than 15 minutes. Just then, a monster walked in and saw the human guests, but 3 girls immediately spoke up, each talking about their own goals in cute voices, leaving the monster speechless. Mirialia was a bit sad because she thought she was left behind because she wasn't attractive enough, but Lionel tried to console her by saying that he trusted her wisdom and that she had a mature way of thinking. She misunderstood that he was secretly saying that he could share the bed with her, but he shyly clarified the situation while she blushed a bit. Still, she looked at him with hopeful eyes, and he realized that he might have spoken without thinking carefully. Just then, the three girls returned, but Lionel told them to hold off on reporting until after dinner, as they might be called upon at any moment. Suki recognized Miralia's expression, and they gave each other mischievous looks. They told Meisha she would be next, and Meisha said she could just sneak into Lionel's bed. Lionel saw his four friends giggling again, and wondered what they were planning. At that moment, there was a knock on the door announcing that dinner was ready and that Lord Zakrant was waiting. Lord Zakrant greeted them, looking like a cheerful middle-aged nobleman, dressed in a rich attire. Lionel thanked him for his hospitality and expressed his gratitude. Zakrant said life here can be quite boring, so he was happy to have them appear. Lionel thought it was time to relax a bit and introduce his team. Zakrant then states that he is a descendant of the demon race, and explains that he was entrusted to protect this fortress by the Demon King for 500 years. The task of protecting this castle is his family's responsibility. However, they are descendants of people who witnessed the horrors of war 500 years ago, when the Demon King's army confronts humanity. The decisive battle took place on the plain of Samel, but Piran Castle did not become a battlefield, but instead turned into a refuge for deserters from the demon army who had given up war. Zakrant's father gave those demons shelter, helping to avoid bloodshed. The Demon King was defeated and moved south, where he founded a new nation. Meanwhile, humanity suffered so heavy losses that it was impossible to pursue, causing Piran Castle to be abandoned. The Demon King later died from battlefield injuries, and a new king ascended the throne. Wars continue to rage between human nations. They divide the land, and fear of demons fades with each generation. With time, the Demon King also forgot about the deserters from a century ago, so they decided to settle in Piran. Also 80 years ago, the current Demon King ascended the throne and began conducting secret trade with Gyria. Therefore, the people nearby probably also knew that there were demons living in this castle. Suki then comments that the previous treasures came from this castle. Zakrant understood what she meant, and explained that not long ago a man had come to inquire. A flashback scene shows a demon telling Zakrant that it is time to reclaim the ancestral land. Zakrant refused the offer, saying that they did not submit to humanity but still lived independently at the castle, and then sent the guest away. Lionel then analyzes what he knows so far. Piran Castle has existed for 500 years, and the leech that attacked the inn once passed through Piran. He concluded that the residents here had nothing to do with the monster transformation. After the other came into contact with Zakrant, someone led the leech to attack Piran Castle but was defeated. Lionel still wondered why a leech was used for the castle raid, when a powerful cyclops or a winged beast would have been much more suitable. Mirialia suggested that perhaps this was some kind of experiment. They were testing their ability to control stronger monsters like the leech and the chimera from the Lacris labyrinth. The discussion was interrupted by the sound of loud footsteps, the ground outside the castle shaking. A giant herd of cyclops is approaching. The castle bells rang, signaling the attack on the castle walls. Lionel and Zakrant looked at the Cyclops pack and realized that they were facing someone with a high learning ability. A Cyclops picked up a large rock and threw it at the castle, breaking the wall. Lionel says it's only a matter of time before they bring it all down. Zakrant apologizes for dragging the group into this trouble, but Lionel replied that man could not stand aside completely. He offers to help, leaving Zakrant grateful but wondering what chance they have against such giant enemies. Lionel replied that the enemy's goal was to take the castle. He inferred this from their attack strategy. Aim at walls and gates to create entrances. Try to minimize damage to the structure, as they want to use this castle as a base for their invasion of the Rintlight Kingdom. Lionel whispers to Zakrant that he has a plan. Zakrant listened and then ordered everyone to the armory. They deployed giant ballistas and shoot a series of large arrows at the enemy. The arrows pierce the thick hide of the Cyclops herd. Zakrant ordered the guards to continue shooting, and finally destroyed all the monsters. Zakrant warned to prepare for a second attack, but Lionel said they wouldn't come back. There was no reason to hold back their forces, so they unleashed all the monsters they had. Now, the enemy realizes that neither the leech's magical power nor the Cyclops' brute strength are enough. Lionel wondered what they would do next. Lionel predicted that the enemy would switch to traditional siege tactics with a massive infantry attack aimed at smashing the castle gates. This method often causes heavy casualties to the attacker, but the enemy does not care. Even though they lost hundreds of troops, they didn't feel anything. A long siege would exhaust supplies and cause the castle to collapse. But Lionel insists this won't last long, and he will reveal the reason when the time is right. They started repairing the damage. A little later, when the demons were busy repairing the city wall, suddenly an army of goblins came to attack. The guards quickly retreated to the castle. A goblin's head was cut in half. Suki joined the battle, taking down monsters one by one from the ramparts. Zakrant realized that Lionel had cleverly concentrated his repairs in positions to lure the enemy into a single path, where they could easily be destroyed one by one. Lionel also speculated that the enemy had no flying monsters to scout, so he just left the main gate open. They may have suspected a trap, but after seeing the chaos of battle, they were not on guard. A demon was seriously injured but was immediately healed by Maisha's healing magic. She vowed to heal all wounds so soldiers could fight with confidence. Just then, they discovered a goblin had sneaked into the castle, but Meg quickly beheaded it. Lionel realized this was the time for the enemy to retreat and ordered Mirialia to launch a series of magic bullets. Kill most of the fleeing goblins. Zakrant praises Lionel for his strategic brilliance, but he humbly said that anyone who knows basic tactics can do it. Lionel also praised the demon soldiers' discipline and ability to understand command. As for the attackers, they called themselves Uni, a group claiming to belong to the Elders of the Kingdom. They kept talking about the Devil's Pride, but could not get any edict from the Demon King, so Zakrant sent them away. Lionel speculates that this is a breakaway group of demons, acting against the will of the Demon King. If so, there will certainly be an official arrest and suppression order. He also thought that there was no magic that could control monsters like that, so perhaps they were using an ancient artifact. In addition to wanting to turn the castle into a stepping stone to invade Rintlight, they also planned to use the castle as a point of defense against the Demon King's pursuers. However, Lionel clarified that this was just speculation and suggested stopping speculation to focus on preparing for a possible attack. With no reinforcements and the possibility of wandering monsters attacking the city, Lionel decides that the best plan is for the Hope clan to go out and destroy Junie. Suki is excited about the idea, but Mirialia worries that the enemy will ambush her as soon as they left the castle. Lionel reassures her that they will be fine, as the enemy has already failed twice. If they show any signs of weakness, their opponents will suspect it's a trap. He then asked Zakrant if he could borrow some warriors. Zakrant happily agreed and wondered what this talented strategist had planned. That night, the Hope clan walked through the woods and encountered the remnants of the attack on the castle. These goblins attacked them, but they easily handled them. However, Lionel warns that these goblins are just pawns. Their purpose is to drain their strength, and the enemy is probably preparing a new attack. Meg wonders what their plan is, and Lionel points to a cave. He says the important part is to see where the creatures appear from. By tracking the retreating goblins, they would determine the location of the main camp. He ordered the group to take a detour before confronting the ambushers. They quickly rushed through the goblins, leading them behind them. Then they met a group of ogres. Lionel guessed that these were elite bodyguards protecting Yunai. The strategist also commented that the enemy made a mistake by not including them in the attack force. Suki and the demon warriors rushed to attack the monsters. A warrior was so fast that an ogre chased her. It was baited and chased, making Suki wonder why it would do such a stupid thing. Lionel responds that these monsters aren't smart, but the real fool is Gunai, who can't handle things right. Suki leads the monsters to the ambush, where Mirialia casts ice magic. Sharp ice blocks shot up from the ground, piercing their bodies and making them unable to move. The warriors easily beheaded the ogres. Misha was disappointed that no one was injured, so no treatment was needed. However, Suki suffered 2 attacks that bruised her back, making Misha satisfied. Lionel says the next step is to find the leader. However, Meg said that wasn't necessary, as Gunai had fainted on the ground. She shows his body and tells him that he was so busy shouting orders at the ogre that he didn't notice her approaching from behind. Lionel looked at his unconscious enemy, somewhat surprised by the ease with which he was captured. He ordered his soldiers to bring the body back to the castle and contact the Masler Kingdom. Lionel noticed a shadow hidden behind the trees and wondered if there were any enemies left. It was Salieri. She came out and said that she was not the enemy, but came to capture the person who was being lazy next to the Dark Woman. Salieri has always been misunderstood since childhood because his face always looks like he's dreaming. Adults often scolded her, telling her not to dream. However, she studies very well and always balances her studies, but no one appreciated her efforts. Gradually, Salieri began to hate his own appearance. One day, when assigned to guard the border, another elf asked her if she could change her duties because he found farm inspection work too boring and thought it was very suitable for a dreamer like her. At that moment, she realized that it was a weapon. She tells Lionel that she is one of the kingdom's elite fire extinguishers and is very skilled in assassination and reconnaissance. Meg thinks Salieri was careless to reveal all that information. She looked into Lionel's eyes, who realized that Salieri's style was to play dumb, to keep people from letting their guard down. Salieri felt impressed because less than 10 people could recognize that at first sight. She approached Lionel looking like she wanted to seduce him, but immediately Suki stepped between them. Misha hugged Lionel tightly from behind, and Miralia held his hand protectively. The group returned to the castle together. Zakrent was assured that the prisoner was safely detained. Salieri then requested help in compiling a report for the kingdom's government, asked them to reveal every detail leading up to the battle while she took notes. Lionel continued to observe and try to guess her motives. She told him to stop staring at her, said that his eyes were always as sharp as hers. Maybe they really were the same. After finishing writing the report, she called a messenger bird to deliver the letter to the border fortress. Suki felt impressed as they watched the bird fly away. Lionel asked how long they would have to wait for a response. Salieri calculated that it would take about 5 days. Lionel thinks she shouldn't be so careless with important information like military positions. She added that, in fact, her cousin was the king's secretary, so everything at the king's castle is fine. Mylene gives the report to Ingral, saying that Salieri may not seem outstanding, but she actually has a lot of potential. Ingral opened the letter and was moved to tears when reading the contents. He concluded that the right gesture would be to invite the people of Piran to the royal palace to express great thanks. Mylene commented that the writing was very concise and orderly, but also wondered about some passages in the letter. Ingral didn't know too well, but he focused on handling the situation. Salieri had said that they should honor those who achieved their achievements, which meant inviting the people of Piran to the castle. A grand party will be held where they will receive rewards. However, those people were citizens of the Lintlight Kingdom, their sworn enemy. As for Piran, this would be like summoning the head of an independent country. Mylene commented that they would have to invite adventurers, whether individuals or factions. Ingral realized there was no other way. As for the Lord of Piran, normally they would plan ahead in a meeting, then act cautiously, but Salieri has already crossed that line. So negotiations will be very difficult. They still don't know how they will view this relationship with the Demon Kingdom, and the presence of humans will complicate things. Mylene then offers to go to the castle herself first. Ingral was very happy to hear that, and reminded her that she was going as his secretary, not as his lover. She just laughed and told him he was too worried. He also told her to pay attention to how she spoke, because inappropriate jokes could make things worse. He then praised her as his most trustworthy subordinate, and said that her absence would leave a void in his heart. She smiled, then assured that she would handle everything carefully. At the castle, repairing the castle walls will take several days. In addition to time, a lot of money is also needed. Zakrent says they can make more money. The material can be rebuilt or replaced, but nothing can replace a life once lost. Therefore, that is what they have to appreciate the most. Zakrent wondered why a talented strategist would complain about such a small repair cost, and Lionel replied that it was because he was out of money. This surprised the Lord a bit. Lionel continues to say that 15 days have passed, and the messenger from the demon realm will soon arrive as scheduled. He noticed Mylene and Ingral in the distance, and together they entered the castle and greeted them and made greetings. Mylene then reveals that the Demon King wants to turn Zakrent's territory into a state. Lionel thinks this move could create tension in the demon realm, possibly even leading to war. The Lord was silent for a moment, letting everyone in the room wait, then surprised everyone by happily agreeing without hesitation. He also insisted on immediately deciding on the tax rate. Lionel was a bit confused when he saw Zakrent deciding on such an important matter so comfortably. The Lord explained that his ancestors only abstained from participating in war. If the current Demon King wishes for peace with humans, he will support it. Mylene thanked Zakrent for his wise decision, and even Lionel was impressed with the Lord's reasoning and straightforwardness. Lionel imagines the idea of humans and demons living together in peace, and realized that if the Demon King made any mistake, Zakrent would immediately rebel without hesitation. Mylene changed the subject, saying she wanted to invite them all to the royal capital. She officially introduced to everyone His Majesty King Ingral, the Demon King. The Demon King and Zakrent shook hands, expecting to build a better future together. Mylene knelt down, formally inviting them, but Zakrent smiled and told her to stand up. Suki is eager to explore. Meisha is ready to smell the delicious food, while Meg wished she had more pocket money to go shopping. Suki suggests they rob a group of bandits for cash, but Lionel looked at them and reminded them that they weren't just there to have fun. Mirialia is thinking about the political implications. Piran Castle existed before the Kingdom of Lintlight. It originally belonged to no country. When the human kingdom was established, they drew the borders and accidentally included the castle in their territory. If Demon King Masuru turned this place into a vassal state, It would be like cutting off part of Lintlight's territory. However, thanks to its location near the border and the Demon King's protection, the castle would likely be safe and become a deterrent to war. The situation is further complicated when rumors of uprisings are spreading throughout Lintlight. Even though there were important figures like General Kaitos keeping things under control, a quick coup was still not feasible. Suki chimes in, saying these conversations are boring. Einol told her that if that was the case, she should go back to her room, and also said it was their bedtime. He chased the four girls back to his bedroom. The next morning, the group was ready to leave for the border. Lionel wondered if it was safe to go without any protection. However, Zakrant was not worried, as Clan Hope was accompanying them. Furthermore, Salieri is a strong warrior, which even Suki admits is very strong. Her natural ability is that of a magical swordsman, so her presence opens up more strategic options. He can combine Black Elf with Suki to form a powerful team with two leaders, or you can focus on the commanding role in the middle. They could even form a dynamic duo with Mirialia as two magicians combined, or with Meg as stealthy attackers with stealth skills. Meisha felt a bit sad because she wasn't mentioned in the options, but Lionel said her role was clearly defined and extremely important. She immediately became happy again. In the Kingdom of Lintlight, General Kaitos is fighting rebel forces. He ordered his soldiers to kill all those who betrayed the nation. After winning, they looked at the corpses of their enemies and discovered that one of the rebels was an adventurer who had accompanied the army on the last mountain hunt. The soldiers were confused and surprised that he had foolishly allied himself with the rebels. However, General Kitos saw this as a bad omen, believing that his own nation was the fool.